because I get this question all the time. How do I help my brother, my sister, my dad, my mom, whatever, my friend who has cancer? I encourage to like send them to my website, right? Or send them my book and just say something like, hey, I just saw an interview with this guy who healed cancer. It's like in 20 years. And he took this, he did it holistically. And I don't know, I just thought of you and whatever. And so that you could send them to chrisbeatcancer.com. They land on the site. They can watch the very first video. If it doesn't resonate with them, okay, well, then this is not for them, right?
Yeah.
Or they read my book. If it doesn't really light a fire in their heart that like inspire them and give them hope and encouragement and empowerment, then yeah, this is not the path for them. But just something casual like that, like you don't want to turn it into something where you're like nagging and begging and arguing and like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But just a casual like, hey, I thought of you. I know, you're getting all kinds of information and stuff, but, I saw this guy or I read his book or he made this video. I just thought of you and wanted to send it to you because I love you. Like to me, that's the best approach. And then you just have to just be cool with, they may never look at it, right? Cross your fingers, like say a prayer, maybe they will. But I've interviewed dozens and dozens of people who've healed all types and stages of cancer.
Yeah.
Those interviews are on chrisbeatcancer.com. They're on my podcast. They're on my YouTube channel. So like you can go to my website and type in breast cancer and a ton of interviews will come up.
Yeah! What's up, everybody? Your life alchemist, your dragon. Welcome to Alchemized Life. I'm your host, Justin David Carl. This is a show where I seek out and share expertise, wisdom, and thought leadership in all domains with the mission of empowering and inspiring you to proactively design and truly live a life worth living. We're all in this together, and when we do the work together, we go so much farther, so much faster, and have so much more fun. Without further ado, let's dig into this episode and alchemize life. Chris Wark, Chris Beat Cancer, the book, the podcast, along with several other books and lots of empowering content all around healing cancer. Thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. Good to have you here.
Yeah, man. It's good to be on your podcast, Justin.
So to kind of set the scene for the audience, cancer has been very prevalent in my life for the last, I want to say 10 to 15 years. My mother got diagnosed with breast cancer, and around the same time, my father got diagnosed with prostate cancer. And for me personally, that has been one of the most challenging things I've had to deal with in my life, because really that's the first time that I felt that the life of my parents was being jeopardized. So I'm incredibly excited to have you on the podcast to share your journey of healing yourself of cancer, as well as sharing all the insights and tools, tips, strategies that you use to do that we can share with the audience, and then also that we can share with people who have cancer that runs in the family, and maybe even support members in their family that have cancer. So I'm going to pass it over to you. When did you first get diagnosed with cancer?
I was diagnosed in December 2003. I was 26 years old. And spoiler alert, I did not die. Here I am. My 20-year cancerversary is this December. And I believe with my whole heart that the reason I'm alive still is because I chose a different path toward survival, to health and healing. And that was the holistic path. The symptoms I was having were abdominal pain. And it persisted for the better part of a year. Went to the doctor, was referred around. No one could figure out what was wrong. And then eventually I had a colonoscopy, and they found a golf ball-sized tumor in my colon. That's the large intestine, for anyone who's not sure what a colon is. And I was told, of course, they biopsied it, sent it to the lab, confirmed it was cancer. I was told, we need to get this thing out of you before it spreads and kills you. You need surgery right away. And I was a pretty clueless cancer patient. I'd never really had any health problems or medical problems in my life, never really taken a prescription drug, other than pain pills for my wisdom teeth coming out. So I didn't have any experience being a patient. And I learned very quickly what it's like to be a patient. And in the cancer world, there's a sense of urgency, and patients are rushed into treatment really before they have time to think or read or research. They don't understand their disease. They don't know what the causes are. They don't know anything about the treatments or the drugs. Doctors tell them very little about the drugs they're prescribing. They certainly don't cover all the side effects of the drugs and risks. The amount of time that patients spend with doctors is horrifically short. And so patients are just rushed in out of fear, right? I don't want to die. I'll do whatever you say, right? And unfortunately, that it puts people in a very precarious position because they are quickly brutalized, whether it's having body parts removed, being irradiated, injected with highly, highly toxic, extremely dangerous and destructive drugs, all with the goal of this sort of hopeful cure, which for most patients ends up being very elusive. And most patients are not cured, especially stage 3 and 4. A lot of stage 2 patients struggle with continual recurrences. And so, again, I didn't know any of that, right? And so I was just told, we got to get you in surgery right away. They wanted to have me in surgery within a couple of days. I ended up postponing it till December 30th because I didn't want to be in the hospital over Christmas. And I went in, they took out a third of my large intestine. That's where the tumor was. When I woke up, they said, you're stage 3C, you're worse than we thought. You had positive lymph nodes. We got everything we could see, but you're going to need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy. So, at that time, it was like, man, it just went from bad to worse, and I'm a Christian, and it was a big test of my faith. I mean, my faith was really shaken, and because you're thinking like, God, like, why is this happening to me? I'm not like a thief or a murderer or a rapist or a child molester. Like, I'm not a bad person like that. I'm not the kind of person that would say, yeah, that person deserves cancer for sure, right? I was like newlywed, playing on the worship team at my church, like really trying to build a business in real estate and like, just really trying to live a good life, And so that was really hard. But I was reminded of this verse, Romans 8:28, which says, God works all things for the good of those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. So it's like, God works all things for the good of those who love him. All things. Like, that's a promise. And it's challenging, right? It's like, well, do I believe this or not? Do I believe that God's going to work this for my good or not? And it's sort of like, that's a test of faith right there. Do you believe it? And so I just, I feel like I had no choice to believe it. I was like, I've got to believe it because the alternative is pretty scary, right? It's hopeless. And so I'm in the hospital, and the first meal that they served me after cutting out a third of my large intestine was a sloppy Joe, which is like the worst, like just horrible cafeteria food. Like, doesn't get any worse than a sloppy Joe in terms of like cafeteria food. And as far as I knew, it's like the sloppy Joe. Where can you get a sloppy Joe, right? Well, the military, summer camp, prison. That's where they serve sloppy Joes, right? And surprise, hospitals. So yeah, that was a bit of an eye-opener for sure. And then a few days later, they told me I was going to be able to go home, and I was talking to my surgeon, and I just happened to say, hey, is there any food I need to avoid? And I wasn't a healthy guy or a healthy eater or anything, but just instinctively cut out a part of my digestive tract, right? So you're just thinking like everything you eat goes through there. And I was just trying to make sure there weren't any like totally off-limit foods, right? I mean, you've probably heard like if you take certain prescription medications, like they don't want you to eat grapefruit, So anyway, his answer was, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer. So I was like, okay, that's it. That's all the advice. And I started, sort of connect the dots that the medical industry, a healthcare industry doesn't really care about your health at all. If they cared about your health, they would put a priority and an emphasis on the food you're eating. And they don't care. And what I've since come to learn, doctors are regular people, just like everybody else. And guess what? There's a lot of unhealthy doctors, a lot of very, very unhealthy doctors. And the average person doesn't think about that, right? They think, oh, the doctors, they're in the healthcare industry. They know everything about health and sickness and disease. And it's like, well, sort of, but they're trained in human anatomy and they're trained in pharmaceutical drugs, right? And surgical procedures and some specialized, procedures and things. But generally speaking, there's tons and tons of doctors who are overweight, who are smoking cigarettes. Yes, there are still doctors who smoke cigarettes, nurses too, of course, who drink too much alcohol, who are on all sorts of prescription medications for their health problems. And so you can't expect a doctor or any person who is not well to lead you down the path of wellness. They're not equipped. They don't know the path, right? That's like me just going to the grocery store and just asking some random person to be my fitness trainer.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, who knows if they've ever been to a gym, right?
Yeah.
So, especially a person that is visibly not in shape. So again, my preconception of medical professionals was basically like evaporating, right? I had a belief about medical professionals that turned out to be just false. And so I get home and I'm recovering from surgery. I'm weaning myself off the pain medication. And as I sobered up, I really started to think seriously about my future, about my life and my health, and like what was to become of me. And the idea of poisoning my way back to health didn't make sense. I didn't know much about chemotherapy, but I knew it was poison, like super, super toxic, poisonous. And I knew that it made people look like the sickest people I'd ever seen in my life were chemo patients.
Yeah.
And it's important to point out that cancer didn't do that, right? The chemotherapy is doing this to people. Not to say that cancer can't kill you, but they often, the face of cancer is a bald-headed chemo patient, right? And I just thought, man, I don't want to become that. Everything in me was just screaming like, don't do that. But I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have any like foreknowledge. I wasn't prepared at all for the diagnosis at 26. And so I prayed about it and I was just like, God, I don't know what to do. Like I need some help. I need some direction. Like, please show me what to do, and I trust you. I'm just trusting that you'll provide a way for me, that you'll supply all of my needs. And 2 days later, I got a book that was sent to me from a friend of my dad's. I'm in Tennessee. This man was in Alaska. And he sent me a book by George Malcolmus, who had healed his colon cancer 30 years prior with a raw food diet and juicing. And I'm reading his story and I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Is this really possible? Like the body can heal? And I had just major epiphanies, and the big one was that the body creates cancer and the body can heal it, right? These are your cells. It's your DNA. It's not a foreign invader necessarily, right? Your cells have mutated. And if you fight cancer, you're fighting yourself, which doesn't make any sense, right? So the goal is not to fight cancer. The goal is to heal cancer. And I also realized and learned that most cancers are caused by 3 factors. In fact, up to 90% of cancers, according to some researchers, are caused by 3 factors: diet, lifestyle, and environment. Well, what do those 3 factors have in common? Your choices. Your choices influence all 3 of those factors. You choose what you eat, you choose your lifestyle, and generally, once you become an adult, you choose the environment or environments that you exist in, your home environment, your work environment. And so this was a big revelation because most cancer patients, including me, just think cancer is bad luck.
Yeah.
Right? Just bad luck or bad genes. And the sad thing is their doctors tell them the same thing. When a patient asks their doctor, like, why did I get cancer? Like, how did I get this? the doctor says, well, we don't know, it might be genetic, it might be hereditary. Do you have a family history? Or they just shrug their shoulders and say, we're sorry, we don't know. You don't have a family history. It's just bad luck, right? At that time, I had no family history. So, and what that does is it basically disempowers the patient. It turns them into a victim of disease. Because when you tell someone your problem is completely arbitrary and random, you had nothing to do with your problem. There's nothing you can do to help yourself fix this problem because you didn't cause it. And your only option is to show up for treatment. That's it. So patients, they just become hopeless and helpless. And then they go home and they say things like, well, my doctor said I don't have to change my diet. My doctor said it's not diet. I have the best doctor. My doctor's amazing, right? And they trapped in this very, very dangerous victimhood mentality. It's the victim who thinks they know everything.
Yeah. They're giving all their power to their doctor.
Absolutely. They've abdicated all their power to their doctor. They've put all their faith, hope, and trust in another human to save them, and they have shirked all of their responsibility. And so the message and the revelation that I had, which has become my message, is the way I was living was killing me. I was willing to accept that to be true, right? I was willing to entertain this idea that maybe this is my fault, right? So that's step one, right? It's almost like the 12-step program that people in AA go through, right? You have to admit you have a problem, right? And admitting you have a problem, it also means admitting that you're responsible, like you have a part to play in the problem. You have responsibility for it, taking ownership of the problem. And look, I'm not here to blame any patients, right? I'm not here to say like, it's your fault you have cancer, right? You should feel terrible about yourself. Like, that's not what I'm here to do. What I'm here to do is say, hey, look, maybe it's your fault. And either way, whether you caused it or you didn't cause it, it's your problem, right?
Yeah.
It is now your problem. And you should take responsibility to own this problem and work to solve it. Help yourself. And the empowerment message is you can help yourself survive. There are things you can do that increase your odds of survival and healing and improve your quality of life that your doctor is not telling you to do. You can and should do. You don't have to do it. It doesn't make any difference to me, but as a patient advocate and almost 20-year survivor, this is my mission. It's just to educate patients and anyone else who's interested in cancer prevention on what they can do to help themselves prevent and heal cancer. And it's the things that you do to help yourself, they don't differ based on your type of cancer. Holistic health means empowering your body to heal, strengthening your immune system, improving detoxification, nourishing your cells in a way you never have before, supplying all these vital nutrients that you get from food, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, fiber, probiotics, and all of these thousands of what are called phytochemicals or phytonutrients. These are molecules, compounds only found in plant food.
Yeah.
If you don't eat plant food, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, if you don't eat plant food, you don't get them. If you don't eat them, you don't get any benefit, right? And so there are hundreds, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of thousands of published studies on the anti-cancer compounds in fruits and vegetables. There are so many, and they all work together synergistically in your body to help you if you consume them. And food really is medicine. Food can also be poison, right? It depends on the food you eat. And so what I'm saying right now, these are things that it took me a long time to learn. I didn't come into cancer with any of this knowledge. All I had were my instincts and my intuition, which was telling me chemotherapy is going to break you down and make you sick and weak and more vulnerable. There's no guarantee it's going to cure you. And changing your life, overdosing on nutrition, and building your body back up, doing everything in your power to build yourself back up, seems like a better way. And I had more faith in that process than I did in the medical approach, right? The conventional medical approach. So I changed my diet overnight. Raw food diet, 100% organic raw food. I bought a juicer. I there was no deliberation. I just knew like I'm doing this, and I was excited to do it. You know, it wasn't like I was walking around the grocery store like moping, you know, with like a little tear coming down, right? Like, because I can't buy frozen pizzas anymore. I was just like, let's go. Like, where's the produce section? Like, load up the cart. I'm going to figure this out. And I wasn't a healthy eater before that. I was a junk food connoisseur. I've always been thin, whatever I wanted, never gained weight. I could eat anything I wanted, like drive through, supersize every time. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I just, you know, double cheeseburger, extra large Coke and fries, like no problem. Like I just have a high metabolism. So anyway, I knew all the best barbecue joints in town, the hole in the wall barbecue joints. Because Memphis is a beer and barbecue town. So like I knew all the best hole in the wall, like dangerous parts of town barbecue. That's the best barbecue, by the way. Like when there's like risk of, you know, assault and battery, you know, possibly homicide, like, you know, you're about to get some good barbecue. So yeah, I mean, and I wasn't eating fruits and vegetables. Like I could eat a salad and enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's no problem with salads and stuff, but I just made this decision to really go hardcore. And so, by the way, anyone can do this. Any person can change their diet overnight. And that's a huge shift. Like you're making a huge shift in your life. You may not feel it the next day, but I'm telling you, when you start pumping in fruits and vegetables, things change in your body. Like your vitamin and mineral levels change, your microbiome changes. Within 24 hours, it starts to change for the better. Your gut bacteria, good gut bacteria starts to flourish and bad bacteria starves off. So, and then you're increasing the levels of circulating anti-cancer compounds that you find in broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, onions, mushrooms, peppers. Like, so I figured out pretty quickly, like the simplest strategy to get the maximum amount of produce in my body every day was to make a giant salad, right? To eat a giant salad for lunch. And then I guess I can eat another giant salad for dinner. Yeah. And so the cover of my recipe book, which is called Beat Cancer Kitchen, is a picture of the giant salad. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous when you just load up a giant bowl with as many vegetables as you can, right? I'm not talking about iceberg lettuce, cherry tomatoes, cheese, and broccoli, you know, bits, broccoli bits. I'm talking about broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, onions, mushrooms, peppers, all that stuff I mentioned earlier, sauerkraut, avocado, almonds, walnuts, sprouted garbanzo beans, sprouted lentils, sprouted mung beans, apple cider vinegar, a little olive oil, then put a little pepper on there, put some turmeric or curry powder, like cayenne pepper, oregano, parsley, dulse. I mean, you just load it up and it's delicious. It's so good. It's like savory and spicy and like you just get all these flavors mixing together that just make vegetables come alive. And so I kind of got that dialed in relatively quickly and decided, okay, this is it. Like this is my meal. And then juicing or drinking about 64 ounces of carrot juice every day. And that evolved a little bit. I started blending up other vegetables into the carrot juice, you know, celery, cucumber, you know, greens, garlic, turmeric, ginger root, stuff like that, beets. But 64 ounces of vegetable juice every day. And juicing is really powerful. People are afraid of juice. They think it's too much sugar. And it's like, couldn't be farther from the truth. Juice is medicine. It is medicine. It is extract from a plant. This is plant medicine. And when you drink a juice every hour or two, you are dosing medicine, right? It is circulating into your blood, going to your cells and giving you a benefit. And that benefit might last an hour or maybe a little longer, but power of juicing is doing it all day, every day, right? Whenever you eat a meal, there's a benefit, but it's short-lived, right? So it's that continual dosing that keeps up the healing momentum. So, you know, I got that dialed in. I found a naturopathic doctor who connected me with an integrative oncologist. You know, the naturopathic doctor prescribed a bunch of supplements and herbs and stuff. And I was like, all right, sure, whatever. Like, I'll take it. If there's no risk of harm, right? And there's a possible benefit and I can afford it, I'll do it. I'll take it. I'll eat it. I'll drink it, swallow it. You know what I'm saying? I'll lay there, whatever it is, the therapy. Like that was my criteria, right? No risk of harm, possible benefit, and I can find and afford it. And so, because I didn't, I still, after 20 years, I can tell you I've heard so many stories of healing, and generally there's no miracle cure. There's no magic bullet. There's no quick fix, but people can heal cancer if they're willing to do the things that I did, which is radical, massive life change. Starts with the diet. And then from there, remember how I said the 3 main causes of cancer: diet, lifestyle, and environment? So that's the diet part. Lifestyle is, you have to reorganize your life, how you're living. Cigarettes, number 1 cause of cancer. You should stop smoking if you want to prevent cancer or heal cancer. Like, you just stop smoking. Don't vape. Just put it down. You can do it. Alcohol, very, very well established cause of cancer. So, I get it. Beer, wine, mixed drinks, it's fun. They taste good, make you feel good, but alcohol causes cancer. And so you got to quit drinking, if you're trying to heal. If you're trying to prevent cancer, you want to limit alcohol to a few times a month. That's about as close to the safe level as not drinking. But daily drinking, you're increasing your risk of all kinds of chronic disease, and even weekly drinking too. So you really want to make it special occasions. And then exercise. Being sedentary increases your risk of all kinds of chronic disease and cancer, and being active decreases your risk. And exercise is so incredible. It turns off genes that promote cancer, and it turns on genes that prevent cancer. Exercise increases your circulation, improves it. It increases detoxification through the movement of your lymphatic system and through sweating. It facilitates the release of feel-good molecules and hormones that improve your mood. Exercise is an antidepressant. It works as well as any drug. So exercise is awesome, but most people just don't feel like doing it, Usually it's because they're not in the right environment. And so the thing is, you got to find some form of exercise that you enjoy. Maybe you don't like going to just a regular gym. I get it. Just go to the gym and run on a treadmill by yourself. That's not very fun. But walking outside is wonderful. Running, cycling, or find a class that's fun. Yoga, Zumba, jazzercise, CrossFit. It doesn't matter. Rock climbing, martial arts, any form of exercise where you're moving your body, your heart's pumping, you're sweating, is good. And so you want to shoot for 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week. More is better, but 30 minutes is ideal, So 30 minutes to an hour. Awesome. You're doing it right. You're getting tremendous benefit. And so that's something that, I had to just block it off and make it a part of my routine. It's a non-negotiable part of my day, whether it's the morning or afternoon or evening, doesn't matter. Don't do it right before bed. It actually affects the quality of your sleep. But generally, pick a time that you can do it and just make it a priority. So those are the lifestyle pieces that are not hard to solve. They're not hard to change, right? It takes a little effort, a little determination to break your bad habits, but it's worth it. You're worth it. And there's no bad habit that's worth dying over, that's for sure. And then the third thing after lifestyle is environment. Environment's a little tricky, right? Because it takes more work and time to change your environment, right? It's not easy to move, right? That's an undertaking. But you might be living in a toxic area. It's not easy to change your job, but you might be working in a toxic factory, with fumes and gases and smoke and soot and all this kind of stuff that you're breathing in. But everything really has to be on the table when you have cancer. You really have to examine your life and think about what in my life could be contributing to my disease. And it's probably not just one thing, right? It's a multitude of factors that you need to reduce or eliminate systematically, one by one. You're reducing your toxic load and improving your health in the process. So again, the cool thing though, I will say, is that if you start eating this super healthy diet and exercising, your body becomes so much more resilient and starts protecting you against the harms of a toxic environment. So you're already becoming more protected from, those toxic elements, but still take steps to change. Sometimes it's not the physical toxins, it's the stress from your environment. Your home life or your work life could be incredibly emotionally toxic, mentally and emotionally toxic, right? Just from unhealthy, abusive relationships, right? And abusive has a lot of there's a scale, right? It's a wide spectrum of types of abuse, right? From psychological to verbal to physical to sexual, but obviously it's all bad, right? It's all harmful. So these are the things I did. I had to really systematically work through my life and change the way I was living and change my daily routine. And so even though it sounds overwhelming to like, oh my gosh, all those changes, I don't think I could do, it really boils down to just looking at your daily routine, right? And changing your daily routine, right? One little change at a time to your daily routine. All these small changes add up to big change, right? It's like saving money. The first time you put money in the savings account, you don't have very much, right? But like you keep putting money in there over time, like all of a sudden, oh, hey, I got a nice little chunk of money, right? So this is the same principle, right? All these small changes consistently over time add up to massive change. So, I talk about this in my first book. I tell all the details of my story, and there's a lengthy expose on the cancer industry, medical industry, and pharmaceutical industry, things that people just don't know about these industries, how corrupt they are, and and how they use science really as marketing. So they produce science, which I call science-flavored marketing. So they organize studies in a way to produce a result that they want, that they can use to promote a drug, right? And so science has been horribly corrupted by financial interest. And there's so many ways that a study can be organized and conducted to produce a result that the funders of the study want. And the average layperson has no idea, right? And most doctors don't even spend time understanding this. And so the pharmaceutical industry does a study, they develop some new drug compound. They fund a study to prove that it lowers your risk of diabetes or something. And then they submit a limited amount of data to the FDA to get approval. And that data, of course, makes it look good. They get FDA approval. Then they hire salespeople to go and call on all the doctors and pitch them this new drug with all this fancy marketing materials. And by the way, while they're pitching this drug, they're also catering their lunch. You know what I mean? They're bringing them breakfast, lunch, dinner, so they're catering, they're feeding the doctor. So the doctor likes them already because they just brought 10 bags of Chick-fil-A for the whole staff, right? And oh, by the way, can I just take 5 minutes to tell you about this new drug, Subrexaco or whatever, right? And so this is how doctors learn about new drugs, from salespeople, okay? Salespeople. And they give them these bullet points that were fed to them from the drug company. No one talks about this. Most people don't understand this. This is why your doctor says, hey, there's a new drug you ought to try called blah, 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 because a salesperson just told them about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey there. Just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. Today's show is brought to you by Veg Nutrition. Live better. So I'm actually a veg elite athlete. And before I joined the team, I spent months doing my due diligence to make sure that the company was vision, mission, and value aligned with me, my values, my mission, my vision, and my lifestyle. I got to know the owners super well. I even got to know the person who formulates all the products, and they passed with flying colors. So I couldn't be more excited to represent a company that I feel so aligned with. And I want to tell you about two of my favorite products. The first is the veg pre-workout. So when I first went vegan, or mostly vegan, the last thing for me to go fully vegan was finding a vegan pre-workout that gave me the focus, the energy, and the power that I was looking for. And I can tell you, this is the best pre-workout that I've ever had. It gives me incredible focus and energy. And what's probably the best is it leaves me with no crash after I take it, which is great. And the flavors are so freaking good. There's literally peach mango and a Patriot Pop that taste like, the firecracker popsicles, cherry lemon lime flavor. They're literally so good that I can dry scoop them. And they just released a watermelon flavor for just in time for summer, and it's incredible. So that's the first product. The second product is arguably also my favorite, and that's the plant protein. Comes in 3 incredible flavors: chocolate peanut butter, vanilla ice cream, and cold brew coffee. Yep, you heard me. Cold brew coffee flavor. It tastes incredible, all 3 flavors, 25 grams of protein, fully organic, incredible ingredients, heavy metal tested, and it is my go-to post workout. Make sure that I'm recovering and refueling and giving my muscles the protein that they need to rebuild for that next workout. So go to vegnutrition.com/dragon and try their full line of supplements, and you'll get 15% off. Or you can just use Dragon at checkout and you'll get 15% off. So that's vegnutrition.com/dragon to get 15% off. Veg Nutrition, live better. Yeah, in the book you mentioned that, and maybe it's even more now, that a cancer patient is worth about $300,000 to the doctors and the medical companies.
Yeah, now it's even more.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
I published that book in 2018. Yeah, and so, cancer patients are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, even over $1 million of revenue in some cases. The average cost of a new drug is $1 million a year for some of these new drugs. It's absolutely insane. I mean, the cost of drugs are just cancer drugs. And you think about it, from office visits to surgery to hospital, all the hospital charges, right? Administrative fees, and all this stuff you pay when you're in the hospital, to the chemotherapy drugs, to radiation, to more. Then you got more visits, more hospital visits, breast reconstruction, to the wig industry for cancer patients, the nipple tattoos. I mean, it's just massive, massive money-making industry, right? And so what happens is cancer metastasizes to your wallet and patients go broke because it gets so expensive. Even if they have insurance, the copays are tens of thousands of dollars, and upwards of, can be hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket for the cancer patients. So they drain their life savings. They take a second mortgage on their home. They're doing fundraisers. They're selling all their possessions. They're begging everyone they know to give them money. I mean, it's so unbelievably grotesque what the cancer industry does to patients. It's obscene. It's evil. And at the end of the line, after drained all their money they have and they're more in debt than ever, they're not cured, right? Oh, and you still got cancer. All your money's gone. You're bankrupt. You still have cancer. You're leaving your family with all this debt. And so there's a better way. There's a better way. And it's a harder way in some sense. I like to say the most controversial thing I say, in my opinion, is that chemo is easy. And what that means is chemo is easy. Changing your life is hard. And so most people take the easy path, which is they just show up for chemo. I'm not saying chemo is pleasant. It's not. It's very unpleasant. But it's easy. It requires nothing from you. You just go show up, get the injections, and you feel bad and you suffer. But you don't have to look in the mirror and face your flaws and your fears and your failures. You don't have to change your diet. You don't have to exercise. You don't have to forgive people who've hurt you. Nothing is required of you. And you become victimized, right? You're completely at the mercy of a drug to cure you, and a drug that usually doesn't cure most cancer patients. So the paradox of chemotherapy, and something else that I talk about a lot in my first book, is that yes, chemotherapy drugs kill cancer cells. That's true. And yes, they shrink tumors, usually, right? That happens. Sometimes they make lesions go away, right? Someone's got some spots and they do chemo and the spots are gone. That's terrific. But what's happening is these drugs are so toxic that they're causing head-to-toe damage. They're causing collateral damage in the body: brain damage, liver damage, lung damage. They destroy your digestive system, wreck your, microbiome. They cause peripheral neuropathy, which is like losing the feeling in your fingertips and toes from nerve damage. Can cause hearing loss, vision problems, and most importantly, neutropenia. They destroy your immune system. They wipe out your white blood cells and your red blood cells. So your red blood cells can't carry oxygen, right? Your white blood cells are the reason cancer is not all over your body. Even if you have cancer, your immune system is working. It's trying to keep it under control. And so your army of cancer fighters, natural killer cells, B cells, T cells, neutrophils, all these wonderful immune cells that you have in your body are wiped out. And so during treatment, that's not a problem because cancer cells stop multiplying during treatment. But then after treatment, cancer cells start multiplying again, the ones that weren't killed by chemo, and that's the cancer stem cells typically. And you have no army to fight off the circulating tumor cells that are looking for new places to form tumors. And that's why you see so many cancer patients go through treatment, and then in a short time, later, months, maybe a year, they get another scan and there's new spots, right? On their liver, their lungs, and their bones, their brain. This is why. Because their immune system was wrecked. And chemotherapy it slowed the cancer down for a short time, but it made it more aggressive and wiped out the patient's immune system, their defenses. And so, well, what's the difference? Well, when you take a holistic approach to healing, the entire focus of that is building up your immune system. Right? When you flood your body with nutrients that actually are anti-cancer. So there's nutrients in food that kill cancer cells directly, right? There's nutrients in food that tell cancer cells to commit suicide. That's called apoptosis. There are nutrients in food that prevent tumors from forming new blood vessels that they need to grow larger. That's called anti-angiogenesis. And there are nutrients in food that improve your detoxification pathways in your body. There are nutrients in food that increase your immune cells' ability to identify and kill cancer cells.
How long did it take you to heal yourself with this radical lifestyle overhaul?
I can't say for sure because, they took this tumor out. So what we were dealing with was microscopic cancer cells, right? How many were in my body? Who knows, right? Cancer cells circulating in my body. And the whole point was to kill those cells, to eliminate those cells, to empower my body, my immune system, to prevent those remaining cancer cells, billions of cells, right? Because they're very small. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can't see a cancer cell with your eye. To prevent those cells from forming new tumors, which the doctors were pretty certain they would, some matter of time. And so I had blood work done every month. I had CT scans every 6 months. So it was just an ongoing process of overdosing on nutrition to prevent this recurrence. But I will say around the 1 year mark, things started to, I feel like I turned a corner. And, then I got to 2 years and it was like, okay, 2 years, that's a benchmark. The first 2 years is really the most intensive in terms of, and the highest risk of recurrence, usually the first 2 years. So I got there, and then before I knew it, I was at 5 years. Got a CT scan, nothing, no cancer. And then the oncologist that I was working with at the time, I said, "Hey, it looks like you're out of the woods," and that was a big sigh of relief right there. And then about a year and a half after that, which was 2010, that's when I decided, well, gosh, maybe I should share my story. I'm 6.5 years out. I healed against the odds. There's got to be some people out there that would be encouraged to know this,
Yeah.
To know that there's more that they can do to help themselves, right? And by the way, I'm not here to tell anybody don't do chemo. Everyone has to make their own personal choice about the treatments they take. But I'm here to tell you that whether you do chemo or not, all the things that I did, you can also do, and they will improve your health. They will improve your quality of life and improve your odds of survival. And it's not just because I said this. It's not my little pet theory. There's tons of documented evidence and studies on humans who change their diet and their lifestyles, and they have better cancer survival.
Yeah.
So one, for example, is on breast cancer. Women who, this is so incredible. They did a study following women with breast cancer, and they found that women who ate an average of 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day and walked an average of 30 minutes per day had a 50% decreased risk of recurrence after 9 years. Think about that. They cut their risk of recurrence in half with 5 servings of fruits and vegetables and walking. That is so easy to do. It's crazy. I wasn't eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. I was actually eating between 15 and 20 servings every day. Okay. I was doing way more than that. But isn't it nice to know that just a small change can produce a pretty significant measurable benefit? And so there's a lot of research, out there to validate this. And unfortunately, this research is not taught in med school. Doctors don't know about it. And many doctors are just too busy to spend their own time, to spend, any free time they have, which is very little, to read all this incredible medical literature and scientific literature on diet and lifestyle strategies to prevent and heal cancer.
So, question for you. Many of us in our lifetime, if we haven't already, are going to have somebody close to us be diagnosed with cancer. And I feel like one of the challenges with family, especially, and I'm guilty of this, is like when a family member tells me what I should do, I immediately resist, because then like I'm triggered and being like, so you're telling me I'm doing it wrong, right? So I'm curious, like how, now that you've been, speaking about this and working with people for numerous years, like how can a family member support another family member who gets diagnosed with cancer, who maybe isn't living, a lifestyle or consuming a diet or in an environment that is supportive of them healing themselves from cancer?
This is the lesson that I learned the hard way, and I actually write about this in my second book, which is called Beat Cancer Daily. It's a daily devotional. It's a daily reader, and, just with inspiration, encouragement, and practical advice, but one of those days, one of those entries, I talk about this truth, which is sometimes the people that you want to help the most, you cannot help. And that's usually the people that you're closest to, right? It's just reality of life that sometimes the people you want to help the most, you cannot help. And there's a couple of reasons. Sometimes they don't want your help, right? You're just not the person. They're not looking to you. They don't see you as a helper. And so it's very hard to convince them that you can help. Sometimes they just don't want anybody's help and they don't want to change. That's also difficult. And that's pretty common with humans, right? Being resistant to change, being resistant to admit that maybe your problem is your fault. And so therein lies the challenge. And in hindsight, maybe, I guess part of my story that I guess was helpful is that I got a book that was not sent from a family member. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It came from a friend of my dad's. So like maybe there was psychologically, I've never really thought about it until just now. But maybe that actually was really good. So there might be a sort of sneaky tactic that you could employ. But here's my advice. Because I get this question all the time. How do I help my brother, my sister, my dad, my mom, whatever, my friend who has cancer? I encourage to send them to my website, right? Or send them my book and just say something like, hey, I just saw an interview with this guy who healed cancer. It's in 20 years. And he took this, he did it holistically. And I just thought of you and whatever. And so that you could send them to chrisbeatcancer.com. They land on the site. They can watch the very first video. If it doesn't resonate with them, okay, well, then this is not for them, right? Or they read my book. If it doesn't really light a fire in their heart that can inspire them and give them hope and encouragement and empowerment, then yeah, this is not the path for them. But just something casual like that, you don't want to turn it into something where you're nagging and begging and arguing and that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But just a casual, hey, I thought of you. I know, you're getting all kinds of information and stuff, but, I saw this guy or I read his book or he made this video. I just thought of you and wanted to send it to you because I love you. To me, that's the best approach. And then you just have to just be cool with, they may never look at it, right? cross your fingers, like say a prayer, maybe they will. But I've interviewed dozens and dozens of people who've healed all types and stages of cancer.
Yeah.
Those interviews are on chrisbeatcancer.com. They're on my podcast. They're on my YouTube channel. So like you can go to my website and type in breast cancer and a ton of interviews will come up. You can type in prostate cancer. You can type in leukemia, so that's what I would encourage you to do. Educate yourself. Consume a little bit of my content, okay? And that way you can relay it back to someone you care about, right? Because it's more powerful when you say, hey, I read his book and it's good and you should read it. I hope you'll read it. Or I watched this interview he did with a breast cancer survivor and I thought of you. It's really awesome. I don't know.
Hey there, just a few words about the incredible show sponsors for today's episode, and then we'll dig right back in. This show is brought to you by Feel Free from Botanic Tonics. This product is unlike anything I've ever had before. No joke. It's made with kava root and other ancient plants, and just half a shot gives me this incredible sense of focused flow and productivity. And I love to take just half a shot right before I work out. I take it with my pre-workout and it takes my workouts to the next level. It is seriously unlike anything I've ever had. It's also an incredible productivity tool for any big work projects that you have or long periods of time where you just need to be super focused in flow state and get a lot of shit done. So if you want to give this a shot, you can go to botanictonics.com and use code DRAGON at checkout to get 40% off your first order. No joke, 40% off with code DRAGON. That's Feel Free from botanictonics.com, code DRAGON. Feel free, feel good. I love that just Googled the cancer. Like, hey, I heard of this guy. I watched some of his stuff. It was really good. Maybe go on his site and just Google his cancer. There's some interviews with people who have survived what you have. And it's pretty easy. Go on a website and search in the search bar. So that's super easy. My last question for you. I know you did a radical lifestyle overhaul. For somebody like myself, both parents having had cancer, are there any kind of, other than going whole hog and becoming a raw vegan, what are the kind of top 3 things somebody could do to kind of help prevent cancer?
Well, the number one thing is eating a plant-based diet, right? It doesn't have to be all raw, but really focusing on eating plant food every day, fruits and vegetables every day. Do you have to be a strict vegan? No, but eating, an abundance of plant food is the number one best thing. When you look around the world at the healthiest, longest living people with the lowest rates of chronic disease and early death, they eat about 95% plant-based, right? So that's limiting animal food to a few times a week at the most. So that's step one. Anyone can do this, right? You can get my cookbook. The recipes in there are amazing. They're amazing. If you don't love it, send it back to Amazon and get your money back, okay? I'm telling you, they're great. It's called Beat Cancer Kitchen. It's all plant-based. Beautiful. And it's all full color photography too. I hate cookbooks that don't have pictures, right? So it's got the pictures, mouth-watering, beautiful pictures, easy recipes. They are so nutrient dense and delicious. So that's first suggestion. The second is exercise. I know I sound like I'm repeating myself, but exercise helps you prevent cancer, heart disease, diabetes, all kinds of chronic disease. So food and exercise really are the 2 most important things you can do for yourself. The third thing is, besides what I mentioned earlier, hey, you should break your bad habits, right? If you've got obvious bad habits that contribute to cancer, smoking, alcohol, and one I didn't mention, that's pharmaceuticals, because many pharmaceuticals do increase your risk of cancer. Watch the commercials, right? How many drug commercials have you seen where at the end they're may increase the risk of certain types of cancer, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of them, okay? They're not just saying that because they're saying it because they have to legally. They have to tell you that there are known cancer risks from some of these drugs. So even working with your doctor to wean yourself off of pharmaceuticals. But the other big one really, and I know we're getting close to our time limit here, but stress is a major underlying cause of chronic disease and cancer. And so there are people that really focus on doing all the healthy stuff, but they don't look inward at their thoughts and their emotional life and spiritual life. And when you're living in a state of chronic stress and your mind and your heart are consumed with stressful thoughts and emotions, that's going to produce a stress response in your body that's fight or flight. We've all heard of that. It's what I call fight or flight light. So it's not the extreme, like, there's a bear trying to maul me, fight or flight, but it's elevated cortisol, elevated adrenaline, and increased galectin-3, which is this survival protein, I should say, that is inflammatory and harmful. And so there are all these inflammatory processes that happen when you're under stress. And we're in this day in, day out chronic stress. And what's causing it? Well, anger and bitterness and resentment toward people in your past. You've got to forgive them. You have to forgive and let them go. Like, that releases you from the pain. Doesn't make it okay, right? But you're releasing them to God. Just say, God, I forgive them. You can deal with them, right? I'm done holding on to the pain and anger and resentment. Like, forgive me. Have mercy on me, and have mercy on them too. I'm forgiving them, right? You just have to clear the slate. And you can't do it like in one fell swoop. You have to do it by name, right? Every person who's ever hurt you. Forgive every person who's ever hurt you. I've done it. I continue to forgive people when they hurt me because I'm on the internet and people are mean. Okay. Like, this is one of the most powerful things you can do, right? In terms of reducing your mental, emotional, and physical stress is forgiveness. And then being mindful of your thoughts. So like catching yourself when you're envious and jealous, when you're being judgmental and critical, when you're insecure, like if you're talking to yourself, like down on yourself, you got to catch yourself in those moments and interrupt it. Be like, no, I don't have to think this way, right? I'm not going to be envious of that person. Let me just practice gratitude. What's good in my life that I have to be thankful for, right? So you're shifting your focus off of like what you don't have that you think you should have, or you think you deserve, or wish you had, or whatever. Shift your focus off of that and shift it back to like, wait a minute, but I've got a lot of good stuff, right? I've got people who love me. I have food, I have clothing. I can see and hear and walk and talk. I can count my blessings for a long time because I got a lot of blessings, and you do too, right? There's so much poverty and suffering in the world. I mean, if you even have the internet, you're probably not you're probably not living as hard a life as millions of other humans. So gratitude's huge. And then the other piece of the stress, this is a quick run through of the stress. I go deep on this in my first two books on how to identify and eliminate the toxic cancer-causing stress in your life. But the third source of stress is like future-based, and that's fear and anxiety, right? Worrying about the future. You just have to catch yourself and stop, right? Because worry doesn't accomplish anything. It only steals your joy.
Yeah.
And it causes stress. It increases inflammation. And guess what? I didn't mention about those stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. They decrease your immune function. So stress is this insidious cause of chronic disease because it promotes chronic inflammation and immunosuppression, right? This is what stress does to you. Now, a stressful week at work isn't going to do that, right? But it's that months and years of stress, like financial stress, family stress, personal problems, right? Like work stress, like all these stresses, and then all your baggage, right? And your fears and worries and your bad attitudes, like all that stuff compounded really produces some serious stress on you, right? And we tend to compartmentalize and think like, oh, it's this problem over here and that little problem over there and that thing from my past and that worry about the future. Like it all seems spread out, but there's one thing in common. These are all your problems, right? They're all on you. So even though you can compartmentalize them, your subconscious knows. Your subconscious is dealing with all of it all the time.
Yep.
It's like that, So, and it's like the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's what your stresses are doing to you, right? And so the good news is like you really can, if you just decide, okay, I'm going to identify and eliminate the stresses in my life one by one, and you become methodical about it. I'm going to forgive everyone who's ever hurt me. And you sit down and you think through your past, and one by one, you decide, I forgive them. God, they're all yours. right? And then you start catching yourself thinking negatively or critically or worrying, and you interrupt those thoughts. Like this takes time, by the way. You can change your diet overnight. You can exercise immediately. You can start taking supplements tomorrow. Like there's a lot of things you can do to help yourself right away that like hit the ground running, like give you a jump start. And these things take time, but they are so worthwhile and so powerful. And so I know that was a really long answer to your sort of like, what are the 3 things you can do? But it really does boil down to what you eat, how you move your body, and then how you manage the stress in your life.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, you are empowering people to take 100% responsibility for the diet, their lifestyle, their environment, and even their mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual headspace. So,
yeah. And I'll say this, one other thing, just to connect these dots in case because another way that stress leads people to chronic disease is because when you have all these stressful factors in your life, you're going to find a way to self-medicate, right? You're going to find, because, like stress is uncomfortable. It's unpleasant. So you are going to self-medicate. It might be through food, drugs, alcohol, tobacco, right? Like gambling, pornography, sending money you don't have, right? Like there are so many ways that we self-medicate, and look, social media, binge watching TV and movies, like these are all the ways that we distract ourselves from our problems, from our stresses. And none of those are health producing or health promoting activities.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is why I'm encouraging you, if you get to the root cause of your stresses, then you don't need the medication. Right. So this is why people have a hard time losing weight, because many times people use food as medicine because they have a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Right. They have a lot of emotional pain in their life, and food has become their medicine. And so, yeah, they may look in the mirror and not like how they look and do one crash diet after the next or the next, but they don't stick, right? They still need that medication because they haven't really solved the root cause. You know what I'm saying? So that's just hopefully starting to make sense to some of your listeners, that if you take the steps to really get to the root cause of your pain, to forgive people who've hurt you, to work through your life, your emotional life, and your spiritual life too, then it becomes so much easier to make the healthy changes and stick with them, because you're not gravitating towards something that is, a medication or a substitute for actually solving your problems.
Yeah. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. I deeply appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Justin. It was fun.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, literally everything can be used as an opportunity to learn, to heal, to grow, and to transform. So whatever is going on in your life, choose to consciously and proactively harness that energy and use it to alchemize your life to the next level. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or on your favorite social media, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. As always, you can find me at Justin David Carl on Instagram and all the socials, as well as at alchemizelife.com on the web. Until the next time, sending you lots of energy and plenty of dragon magic.